We have a quorum. Let me call the meeting to order. Item 1 on the agenda, election of chairman and deputy chairman. Members, do you think we should elect chairman again? Yes. Yes, we need to.
Okay. 咁我哋咧就跟有人需要咧，咁我哋。
Since some members think that it is necessary to elect the chairman and vice chairman again, we will now kickstart the election of subcommittee chairman according to Rule 22 of House Rules. Yes? Let me catch my breath. Ms. Ann Chang, any questions? Mr. Chairman, since there is already a chairman, is it that if somebody wants to do the election again? Yes, as long as a member proposes that we should elect the chairman again, we need to do it. According to Rule 27 and also Schedule 4 of House Rules, we need to have nominations. A valid nomination will have to be made orally by a member and must be supported at least by another member orally, so that the nomination is valid. Some nominations, please. Ms. Claudia Mo. I nominate Mr. Alan Leong. Any seconder? Mr. Gary Fan seconds. Any other nominations? Ms. Starry Lee. I nominate you, Mr. Christopher Chung. Any seconder? I accept nomination and Mr. Ip Kok Him seconds. Ms. Emily Lau, you are the most senior member in this room. Would you please also ask whether there are other nominations? Any other nominations? No? If there are no other nominations, we will have a secret ballot to elect the chairman. Would the staff please issue ballot papers to members and also the stamp? According to House Rules, the candidates would be given a serial number according to the order in which they were nominated, and members, please stamp against the candidate of your choice. Mr. Leong Kah Kit is number 1. Mr. Christopher Chung is number 2. It is a secret ballot. Please do not show your ballot paper to others. Members can fold the stamped ballot paper in half. And now the staff are distributing the ballot papers to members. Any questions?
好，唔該。得啦，唔緊要啦嚇。總之秘書係派緊嘅嚇。
The staff are distributing ballot papers and stamps.
讀邊句啊？係咪？哦 ，OK。好啦，係咪而家所有委員都係
Does every member have a ballot paper? If members have stamped on the ballot paper, I would announce that the voting process is closed and staff can no longer distribute ballot papers. Okay, voting is closed. Whoever comes in now will not get a ballot paper. If everything is in order, I'll ask the staff to collect the ballot papers using a ballot box. Nobody who may come in now will get a ballot paper.
咁而家咧我哋頭先咧就派咗10。
We distributed 15 ballot papers just now. We will check if we can collect 15. Members, please put the ballot paper into the ballot box yourself. But before that, please do not leave your seat, because no one can put your ballot paper into the ballot box on your behalf, or else it is invalid. Ms. Claudia Mo, can I leave the seat because I'm the nominator? You cannot leave. You have to come and observe the counting of votes. This is the rule. We are not having an election the first time. I thought Mr. Gary Fan, who is the seconder, can do the observation on my behalf. No, just follow the rules, or else we'll have to spend a few hours on debating the rules again. Who should we ask to come out? Ms. Claudia Mo and Ms. Starry Lee, please, you are the nominators. The clerk will first check whether we have collected 15 votes. Please count the votes. The clerk has counted 15 ballot papers. Now we will read out the votes. Number 2. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 1. Number 2. 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 Number 1. Number 1. Okay, I will now announce the voting results. Number 1, Mr. Alan Leong, 7 votes. Mr. Christopher Chung, number 2, 8 votes. And Mr. Christopher Chung is returned chairman. Thank you, members. Thank you, Ms. Lau. Would you like to elect a deputy chairman? Mr. Gary Fan? Yeah, I think it's necessary. You think it's not necessary? I think it is necessary, Chairman. Okay, can we have a nomination For Deputy Chairman, Mr. Gary Fan. Mr. Alan Leung, please. Any seconder? Ms. Sit Ho. Any other nominations? Ms. Ann Chang. Mr. Gary Fan. Any seconder? Do you accept nomination? I do not accept nomination. Any other nomination? Any other nomination? If not, we do not need to conduct an election since there is only one nomination. Mr. Alan Leung, you are elected ipso facto and you will continue to be our Deputy Chairman. Okay. Item 2 on the agenda, update on the progress of the West Kowloon Cultural District development. May I refer you to paper CB bracket 2 306/14 to 15 bracket 01 to 03. We'll now ask the clerk to invite the administration representatives and also those from the WKCD authority to come in.
Thank you very much, the Home Affairs Bureau and WKCDA. Let's invite Mrs. Betty Fong and representatives from the West Kowloon Cultural District Authority to go through the paper with us. Thank you, Chairman. Today I'm here with representatives from WKCDA. We are here to update everyone on the progress of the WKCD development. And in the past few months, we have had certain progress in terms of both software and hardware development, and site foundation works have been completed, and by the end of this year we will begin construction works, and the M Plus project has started in August, and for other pavilions such as the small pavilion and the Lyric Theatre work has started, and hopefully before the park opens we hope to give the public some public space, and in the second half of next year, the temporary green garden will be open to the public for enjoyment, and for the integrated basement, and in the last financial area, we have filed an application to the Public Works Committee, but then it's still pending, and it might somewhat affect the M Plus development, and the costs, the potential costs might also increase. We hope the Legislative Council can approve the funding application as soon as possible, and the WKCDA has applied to the planning department on to relax the building height restrictions, and the application was approved on the 14th of November, and various visual arts events are being held, and in the past weekend we have held the Free Space Fest, and we have seen over 43,000 visitors, which is a record. And in terms of nurturing talents and communicating with stakeholders, the WKCDA has done a lot of work in the past half a year. And in the park design, we have collected comments from the public extensively. And next year, the comments will be tabled to the Legislative Council. And the public sentiments will be reflected. And I would now like to invite Mr. Michael Lynch, the CEO of WKCDA, to walk through the latest developments of the WKCD with us.
Congratulations on your reappointment,
Thank
Mr. Deputy Chairman. Congratulations. After a somewhat eventful summer, very pleased to be back to be able to give you some indications of progress that's been made. There we are. I'm just going to start with a couple of quick photos from the Free Space Festival at the weekend, where, as Ms. Fung said, that it was a very good event, the third time that we've done the event. And, oh, hang on, sorry, I'll just move forward. Yeah, sorry. Okay, great, thank you. Just wanted to quickly update you because we finished at about 11:30 last night. Some 43,000 people attended. Working across the site, we had 20,000 come on Saturday, 23,000 on Sunday. As you're aware, the event was free. We also were able to utilise ferry transport for the first time to the site. All sorts of activity. There was, one of the high points was the orchestra on bicycles, some very rather large overgrown penguins, lots of music, La Fiora del Baus from Spain, some rather spectacular parkour dance projects, and some wonderful projects for all of the family, including that project which went on over the weekend and was very successful. And then the major paid event of the night, the Moors production from Barcelona from La Fiora del Baus. So I think it was a very good way to reintroduce the concept of free space as we move on to talk about the buildings, and to also reinforce the notion that as of this festival we'll now be in the position where the park will start to be closed. We'll have the temporary park open as of, thank you, temporary park open by the middle of next year. So I'm just going to quickly run through a little developments on a number of fronts, including reference to the Town Planning Board application for minor relaxation of the gross floor area. That was approved by the Town Planning Board on the 14th of November. I assume members may want to come back and have some further discussion about that. Just to reiterate where we are, Zishu on the Canton Road end of the site, it's been now under construction for some 14 months, and as of this week we will conclude the foundation and preliminary works, which will be an important step forward. On the other end of the site, design work on the park, the free space, the arts pavilion, now nearing completion with a view to the commencement of works. M+, we have commenced construction. I'll say a little bit about that. And the Lyric Theatre has undergone substantial design work. Clearly, one of the issues in relation to M+ and the Lyric are the decisions by the Public Works and the Finance Committee in terms of the funding issues in regard to the basement. And clearly the bigger, longer term issue is the impact of the XRL on the project, including the already reported delays and some of the issues around that. Zishu, I'm very pleased to report, is now at the almost completed final stage. I think we have 2 more days' work to do on the actual centre, on the foundation work, and then we will be announcing we will be awarding the construction of the main superstructure within the next 2 weeks, and we believe construction will begin on the Zishu site in the second week of December. And in terms of the whole project, I think there's a real sense of achievement that we've got this to this point, and that the decision to place this building on the Canton Road end of the site without any impacts from the XRL was an important step forward. We clearly feel excited by the idea of starting to build on the building itself, and with the other activities that are going on in other places. We'll talk a little bit about that down the track. It was also incredibly gratifying last month to begin work on the foundations. Now that photo is really the first steps in terms of M+. but that work has accelerated greatly over the course of the last couple of weeks with the work on the foundations. Clearly integrally linked to the foundation projects and the public infrastructure works and the work going on around the rest of the site. Completion for M+ is anticipated in the first half of 2018, but the important issue from our point of view is subject to the Finance Committee's approval of the funding applications for the related integrated basement and the public infrastructure works. But I think in terms of public perception, and clearly one of the issues well recognised by the crowd there for free space at the weekend was the idea that from the initial exhibition that took place earlier this year on M+ and the architecture collection, we've now moved to the beginning of the work that will see that building in such a prominent site there by 2018. Clearly the park is really important, as members of this committee have made very clear, including the Arts Pavilion and the free space. We unveiled the concept design in July and briefed the then committee on that. We've moved on substantially in terms of schematic design. We have also, in terms of the overall delivery program, the design team is adopting an organic approach. Both permanent development and interim improvement works are being planned, so that the work on the temporary park is now about to commence off the back of the events that took place this weekend and next weekend. We will open that section of the park in the middle of 2015 with the works around the temporary tree nursery park and the ability to keep the park as a facility for the public right through the period of construction. I think you will remember the concept design which I showed to members in July. Though the construction works are scheduled to commence around mid-2015, and then that clearly picks up the two pieces after we've opened up the part on the top left-hand corner, which will be the temporary park and the temporary performance space, the temporary bike track and the temporary access to the water. I might also point out that in regard to the event we had at the weekend, testing the idea of the ferries, we used the ferry pontoons outside the project site office to be able to bring people from Hong Kong Island and from Kowloon to the site. We think that was a very good first step and are hoping that we will be able to accelerate the work in terms of permanent ferry access. The temporary park on the top left-hand corner is an important part of trying to ensure that we remain open for the public through the construction of the park. The nursery park, as you probably know now, has some 1,500 trees that were put there to be able to test and to develop them. The park designers are in the process now of working on those trees with the experts to work out where some of those trees will ultimately be relocated, which other trees need to be brought in to make the site work. But we will be able to keep open that section of the site through the whole of the construction time. And I think that's an important recognition that always under some demand are public spaces in Hong Kong, and we see that as a good way of being able to meet temporary demand. The Lyric Theatre, which we said a little bit about last time, will be the second major performing arts venue to be provided in West Kowloon after the Zishu. In May this year, we announced that the joint venture of AD and RG from Hong Kong and Yuan Studio from Netherlands was selected to design and administer the construction of the Lyric Theatre. The work on the design has been going on over the last months. We're looking at some interesting challenges both in terms of the basement issue, the proximity to M+, and the development of Artist Square. We're also undertaking some reviews at the moment to see whether we could bring that project a little bit forward so that we could safely say that all of this, of the western end of the site, could be completed by 2020, which we think would be an important step in the overall development. The Artist Square site is really, and in addition to the park, will be our priority in addition to Zishu. Clearly there are issues reflecting the XRL project, the issues in regard to the funding of the integrated basement, and the delays on the XRL project. So our focus is very much to deliver Zishu, to be able to then look at both the cultural facilities, the OACF facilities, some of the income producing activities, the first of the residential and the office space, and the artists' hostel project that we're looking at doing next to the Cross Harbour Tunnel. That is very much the priority at the moment, and clearly we can accommodate that within the funding packages. We just hope that we're able to deal with some of the timing issues on that. In parallel to that will be the all of the park project, which will roll out over the course of the next 2 years. And we see that as very much, if we are able to deliver all of those facilities by 2020, we think that augurs well for the future development of the rest of the site. I just wanted to move on quickly, talk a little bit more about the intensity of the audience and capacity building that's been going on. In working on cultural software development, particular audience building and capacity building. And I think some of the things that I'd like to draw to your attention, clearly M+'s representation at Art Basel in Hong Kong was important in, I think, both focusing attention on the collection, focusing attention on the beginning of the building. We attracted over 12,000 people to the stand that we set up in the foyer there, and I think that was a good way of reinforcing the messages going forward. We've been doing a number of other major community works. Take a Swing in Yamate Community Rest Garden, 5,000 old, young and even all sorts of people there, which was in July. I thought that was a very successful activity in broadening out within our local community the idea of the role that dance and performance takes within the site. We've also done some really, I think, groundbreaking work in terms of what's happening on our website and our associate websites, and what we're doing in terms of moving into the digital world. The online exhibition project Mobile M+ was a huge success. We've also launched a major new initiative called Decade, an interactive music and film platform inviting the public to create their own interpretation of Hong Kong through decades by rearranging the 10 film clips and 10 music accompaniments created by the artists. I think that's been a very popular project. I've said already a little bit about free space. I'm just glad that it didn't rain. The 43,000 participants participated in a whole range of things, both from local performers and some international performers across dance, music, literary arts, physical theatre, as well as a farmers market, a flea market. We really focused this year on the idea of audience participation, where the performers worked closely with the local community. The first interactive anchor show, MURS, M-U-R-S, which created a really interesting and different experience, I think, for Hong Kong audiences. We sold that show, and that was sold out as part of the overall festival. I'd like to share a few of the other upcoming events. Rising Stars, as you know, we're not able to put the Bamboo Theatre on the site because of the building works this coming year. So we are now undertaking an extension of the whole Rising Stars in Cantonese opera. 14 young Cantonese opera artists performed, and we're going to extend that project and undertake the project through Chinese New Year, and after that at Koshan Theatre Annex. the new wonderful space that was only opened a couple of weeks ago. That will take place over 10 days, and Mr. Law Ka Ying is invited to curate the performances. We are also moving to do a number of other major mobile M+ events, including moving images. The first time we've dealt with the issue of moving image. That's going to be a really important step forward, showcasing Hong Kong work and the connections to the moving image program. We see that as a very interesting way of connecting the film, the multimedia and the visual arts communities together, tentatively programmed at this stage for February to April 2015. Let me just go back one. Importantly, to recognise that after the successful Lee Kit exhibition at the 2013 Venice Biennale, we were invited by the Hong Kong Arts Development Council to collaborate with them again for 2015. The dates of that have now changed and will start in May 2015, so we're working on a rather aggressive timeline. We've selected Chung Kin Wah, who had been one of the artists we highlighted in our mobile Yamate project 2 years ago as the artist to represent Hong Kong. We see the work that is now being developed around that, I think, is going to further enhance Hong Kong's relationship within the Venice Biennale and to really throw some significant attention on Hong Kong artists. We've also been running a significant series of intellectual debates on Zishu with experts from all over the world, seminars, workshops, training programs, internship schemes and other collaborative projects. We've also been doing work on new work to be able to make sure that the local arts community are moving in line with our plans for the buildings to be able to look at being able to create new work, innovative work, to be able to be there when the venues have opened. And also on that front, we've been doing significant events as part of the M+ Matters series, exploring critical issues with key players from across the world in the visual arts field, which I think have highlighted both the increasing significance of the visual arts in Hong Kong, the increasing interest in M+'s activities and in the broader development of the Hong Kong artists. I think also it's probably important just to reiterate within all of the programs we're looking at very expanded fellowship programs, internship programs across all sides of our activity, and that's going to be an important next step as we prepare the next business plan for 2015 onwards. And just finally, on the stakeholder and public engagement, you will be aware ongoing dialogue with the arts community, looking at the development of the buildings, looking at the preferred uses of the buildings and the impacts on the local companies. The consultation panel has received significant focus in helping us gauge public views on issues like the park, the bylaws, the development of the park overall. Over 3,000 people were collected, or responses were collected, and 7 focus groups involving over 50 people were held. Those views were a valuable input into what we're doing. We're now in the process of finalising the bylaws, taking into account the park's vision, mission, as well as the public views, and we'll be bringing those back to hopefully a very close future meeting, because we would want to have some sense of understanding within the temporary park of how those things were going to happen. So I think that's it, Mr. Chairman. I'm very happy to answer specific questions along the way.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lynch. Now it's time for questions. Dr. Helena Wong and also Ms. Chen Yun Han, Ms. Starry Lee and also Mr. Raymond Chan have raised their hands. 4 minutes including a reply. Dr. Helena Wong first. Chairman, on WKCD, we are most concerned about 2 things. 1, money. 2, progress. We were told about the software. Well, that's also what we are concerned with. But I'm most concerned with is progress. At the WKCD, part of the site overlaps with the XRL site. I don't know how many hectares, but I think some of the land has been hired out to XRL. I'd like to ask this question. Is it that you have got an agreement with XRL as to about when they will hand over the site back to you so that your progress will not be affected? Who will take the question?
Issue in regard to the XRL site, clearly, the reality is that the project is going slower than we would have hoped. The XRL had a short-term licence over a large part of the site to be used as their work site, their barging points, and for specific works that are being both done under our site and on the adjoining site. Our focus over the last year and a half, recognising some of the issues, was to focus on the Zishu end and on the area of Arthur Square and the park, so that our focus in the Batch 1 venues and hopefully the Batch 2 venues is that we would complete the Batch 1 venues, do Arthur Square, do the park, do Zishu, and then by that stage the XRL would have moved out of the site, and subject to the resolution of the funding of the integrated basement, we would then be in a position to finalise the 2 remaining Batch 2 venues and then be able to start looking at the longer term future of the site. We don't need that site at this point. All of the venues, with the exception of the 2 of the smaller theatre venues, are venues from Batch 3, and largely the sale of the office and residential spaces to the north of the site, as you can see on that map.
You still have time. I still like to ask, I understand we are going to complete WKCD in batches. I think you will tackle mini WKCD first, and it should be completed around 2020 according to your plan that you should complete mini 2020. Is that right? Mini WKCD by 2020. But what about the entire WKCD as a whole? Do you have a timetable for it, the rest of WKCD?
No, we have a timetable where I think we've always said, when we announced more than a year ago the change timetable, Batch 1 and Batch 2 by early 2022, and then Batch 3 was likely to be sometime over the next 6 or 8 years beyond that, subject to where we were on funding and resolution of any of those other issues.
Chairman, so that means we are not sure whether we'll eventually complete WKCD because there are major venues, and it is said that we have also to wait for funding. So in other words, we are not certain about the funding and also the timetable of WKCD as a whole. Well, at the last meeting and also at previous meetings, we were given a timetable that there would be the completion of venues in 2 or 3 batches. Maybe we can have the timetable again. If we are already certain about certain venues, then we should have a timetable for that. Well, actually, the CS4A came to the LegCo in May, and she said that we now have enough funding for both batches 1 and 2. And Chairman, you mentioned the timetable, and that table actually included all the facilities for batches 1 and 2, and we have already started CG Center, M+, the park, and also Arts Pavilion. As for Batch 2, we have already started the design, and then in Batch 2 we still have 2 more venues, one for contemporary performances and another one medium-sized theatre. We hope we can complete the works in 2022 and for them to be commissioned about 1 or 2 years after that. But for Batch 3, including the major theatre, right now we do not have the exact timetable yet, but we can supply another paper to LegCo. Yes, please. Can we have the timeline for Batch 1 and also a table including all the venues? Next, Ms. Chen Yunhan. Thank you, Chairman. I think we are very concerned about WKCD. I agree with you that we were told that the venues would be completed in 3 batches, and we know that funding will cover up to batch 2. We know that. But the question is, during this time, you have this issue of the integrated basement. If I remember correctly, you don't have funding for that yet. Is that right? Is that right? We need to come to LegCo to apply for funding. Right. But that might have a bearing on batch 2 works. What are you going to do? Who will take the question? Chairman.
In regard to the integrated basement, we're hopeful that the processes of the LegCo will allow those decisions to be made over the course of next year, so that that work, which has to happen before you can do anything above the ground, that work is able to happen, and then we'd be able to move forward, any of those venues, the remaining venues in batch 2, and then the future planning of the batch 3 venues, the office, residential and commercial space that will be built over that whole part of the site. Our focus, as we said last time, is very much to deliver the western end of the site by 2020, and then be able to move forward beyond that point once we've resolved some of the difficult issues like the funding for the integrated basement.
我諗阿馮太
係啊，主席，或者答翻阿陳議員嘅提問咧，其實關於個綜合地庫咧，我哋就都食。
To answer the question, the CS4A chairman of WKCDA has already said that the government will take up the tap for building the integrated basement, and we will come to LegCo for funding support. In fact, the first one is already queuing up as number 7 at the Public Works Subcommittee. That is for stage 1. And in fact, that is the basement for M+. And then mid-next year, we will come to ask for stage 2 funding support for design and also for infrastructure. Therefore, we will come to LegCo in stages to apply for funding for the integrated basement. This will not only affect batch 2. We actually need stage 1 funding for the integrated basement so that we can proceed.
進展呢，我就覺得你講係即係總監講呢，係一啲屬於點講啊？係啲係表面嘅即係嘅狀況啦。咁所以變咗呢，就我自己覺得就話，你如果最後要預期去到2020嗰啲或2022嗰啲呢，你包括 MPAS 啊，包括一啲嘅等等呢，我覺得係基本上就你得個講啫喎。嗱，我唔知道立法會嘅情況點樣，但係成個政府要有個準備噶嘛。
You have to provide more substantial information, and you might not be able to obtain the funding in the next year. So how is WKCDA tackling this problem? You cannot just wait for us, because this is unrealistic. As I mentioned to Ms. Lee last time, we also raised these concerns. First is time concern, and second is the money is not here yet. I'm not sure how you will juggle your money and capital. You have to face the administrative reality. And just now, Mr. Lynch mentioned the reports, and I'm really concerned with the car park arrangements and catering arrangements, as well as the pier. And from now to 2022, there's still a long time. I understand that we have a lot of activities like the Free Space Fest. What will you do with the ferry pier? And what are you going to do with the pier? I think the WKCDA still has a lot of problems to resolve. I don't want to elicit any conflicts, but I understand that Mrs. Fong will talk in a minute. The Hong Kong people is paying for this piece of land, and the government should monitor the project. So how is the government doing? Is the government doing its job in terms of monitoring the whole project? Yes, we understand your concerns. And later we will raise questions after the meeting. So after the meeting, can Mrs. Fong provide us with a timeline of the integrated basement. When are you going to come to us for funds? And can you do your math as much as possible for stage 1 and stage 2? And can you provide us with some relevant papers later? Mr. Ma Fong Kwok. Thank you, Chairman. I have 2 questions. First, a declaration of interest. I'm a director of the WKCDA. I'm recently reappointed, so I have to make the declaration now. My first question is, I've been following the situation pretty closely, and in the beginning of this year, there are strong views with regards to the WKCD, and we have met the chief executive, and he was supportive. And because of my efforts, the film industry also held a meeting with WKCD, and there has been a lot of exchanges of information and views. And they have the opinion that WKCD should introduce the film element, and it should provide a major venue for festivals and events for the film industry, and we should have a decent venue for major screening events. And going forward, WKCD should have a place for people to watch movies. So I'd like to take the chance today for the WKCDA management to respond to these requests. And second question is the basement. And I'm concerned with the financing of the basement. Earlier, the government said they are willing to take up the costs for building the basement, but whenever they come to LegCo for the funds, they face a lot of opposition. So, what will the WKCDA do in terms of financing to make sure the project goes according to plan? Chairman, regarding the integrated basement, we provided some preliminary information in May this year, and after the meeting we can provide additional information. And from now till 2016-2017, you can see the our finances and the funds. And Mr. Ma asked about the progress or delays of the basement or the financing of the basement. We are working with the WKCDA to come up with possible plans. And for the $21.6 billion for this fund, we do have certain restrictions. We cannot just spend it whichever way we want. So we are working with the relevant authorities. And the most pressing issue is for stage 1, for the $300 million in stage 1, we have to secure it as soon as possible for building M+. So in the next meeting, we can I can report on the different solutions, and we are working with the WKCDA. Can we invite Mr. Lynch to talk about the film industry?
We've had some very constructive engagement, and I thank you for your engagement with the film community around, in particular, the issue of the Lyric Theatre and the increase in capacity of the Lyric Theatre, if possible, to be able to ensure that for big film openings and for the Hong Kong Film Festival, that the Lyric Theatre would be able to be used as a substantial new injection of quality film space. We see that as very much part of the planning that's going on at the moment. Clearly, the issue within M+ itself, there is provision for the more artistic side of the film business. The project that I mentioned earlier, the Moving Image project, is an important step at bridging the relationship between the visual arts and the film community. And we see it as important to be able to look at whether there might be commercial facilities there within some of the other buildings that might address the film industry's concerns, although we are also recognising that the building we've got substantial commercial cinema complexes in elements next door to us, and that that will really be dependent probably on the next stage of the commercial development rather than what we're doing at the moment. But we see it really is important. I think I think to have a venue like the Lyric Theatre with capacity for 1,450 seats would be a really valuable injection to the film industry in terms of those opening events, some of which have even been shot on our site. Would be a great idea to be able to use them in a more constructive way to continue to showcase it, while at the same time recognising that film, multimedia and the digital side will be an important part of both what's in the collection. For M+, we have many pieces of work that have been brought on that front, and that will provide good interface between the visual arts community and the film community.
好啦，多謝你。我諗你哋翻去諗下，睇電影工業有咩貢獻啊？西九即係。
Thank you very much. Ms. Dari Lee, please. Chairman, the funding for the integrated basement is pivotal. Whether it can obtain approval from LegCo is a pivotal issue. So hopefully the application will be approved. But otherwise, if the funding application stagnates, what impacts does it have on the overall construction costs? And at the same time, the government must have a plan B. So if the application is not approved, what plans do you have? My third question is, and in paragraph 3 of the paper, you mentioned the interfacing of West Kowloon Cultural District with vicinity areas. You mentioned the connectivity issue. What have you done since the 17th of December 2013? As I see, the promenade is not very accessible, and we still don't have enough parking lots. So in the meantime, what have you done to improve the accessibility and connectivity of the WKCD? So perhaps you can address the question on the basement first. Mrs. Fong, we understand that any delays in the funding application would have heavy impacts on WKCD. And the next stage would be in the middle of 2015. We plan to come to the Legislative Council in the middle of 2015. And for the Stage 1 funding application, if it's not approved by the end of this year or even next year, we will discuss with WKCD before reporting to the LegCo. Right now, we don't have an agreed plan yet. We have some plans in the pipeline, but nothing is confirmed yet. We'll report to the LegCo later. And for Stage 2, we are thinking about other plans that can make use of existing resources of WKCD and at the same time satisfying funding requirements. We are talking about a lot of money in the next stage. We are talking about $4 billion. So can WKCD make use of its own reserve? It's a big question mark. Because if they do so, they have less money for other things. So we are still studying these possibilities. The connectivity issue. Perhaps we can invite WKCD to address the connectivity issue.
I guess the point that we've, in my earlier comments, we have kept the public space open up to this point, and we will keep it open until early next year. But to do the necessary work that you've talked about in terms of the waterfront, the tracks, the infrastructure, the trees, the buildings that are going to be in the park, the arts pavilion and the free space, it is just not possible to do the work and to build the park at the same time. So the Chairman and Chief Secretary outlined at her last meeting with this committee the idea of the temporary park that would occupy the northern part of the park space, and which we would keep open for the next 2 years while the park's being completed. We've been doing substantial work with the Transport Department in looking at both the issues of interrelationship between our site and the other sites, the impacts, on the new XRL site. So, connectivity is still one of the three embedded principles. The ferry project that we did at the weekend with Free Space was meant as a first step to see whether the people of Hong Kong would embrace the idea of using ferry transport to get to West Kowloon. It's always been regarded by us as a fundamental precept of making it accessible and making it connected, and also taking advantage of the fantastic site. I was very pleased to see the response over the course of Saturday and Sunday to the ferries. Gives me absolute confidence that ferry transport or water taxi transport will be really important. The only issue for us is beyond what we've just had approved by the Town Planning Board and what's approved in the development plan. We now have to progress, which we will do over the course of the coming months, the two proposals for piers on the side of the park.
OK， 我諗答得唔係咁好啦，要我諗會。
I think the answer is not very satisfactory, so perhaps we will find another time to talk about the connectivity and accessibility issue of WKCD. Let's discuss it another time. Okay, Mr. Ray Chen. I'm concerned with the advanced work for the integrated basements as well. The government said there might be delays, so can you elaborate? What's your expected completion date, and what's the date? When do you expect the funding application to be passed at LegCo? What's the anticipated completion date, and what's the existing situation? So what do you mean by a delay? And if the advanced works are delayed, you said there would be steep consequences to other projects in the entire WKCD. But just now, Mrs. Fong said in the middle of next year, the $4 billion required cannot be mobilized, but at the same time, you can mobilize another fund. Is this the case? You talked about the Free Space Fest. I was there yesterday. We have more than 40,000 people. Of course, we can consider it successful because it's a flagship event.
Every year, people can go to WKCD. Well, it used to be just a vacant piece of land, maybe a property project. But then we should not just look at the participation and say that it was successful. In fact, there was quite some unhappy experience yesterday. We had to walk half an hour because there were too many people. We had to walk from the MTR station, and that took half an hour. And also, if there were cars coming in, the staff would be shouting to people to go back onto the pavement. And there was insufficient signage for the taxis. They might venture into your area inadvertently, and the passenger was not allowed to alight, and there were conflicts. Maybe that was the first experience people had with WKC, and that was not exactly totally happy. So you need to review how you conducted these activities. Back to Free Space Fest, you charged an admission fee, but now it was free. You charged an admission fee for 2 years, and then now it has become free. Why was that decision made, and when was that made? We were told that the entire WKCD will be closed next year for construction, so people should come here for the last time to gain access to the promenade. But you should have prepared for this. You should have known the timetable. You should not just say so when tickets were suddenly made free. Mrs. Fong, can you answer the question on the basement first? Mrs. Fong will answer the question first. And on Mr. Chan's question, actually the timetable is quite pressing. We came to LegCo in May, and we said that hopefully the first batch of money could have been supported in summer, which has already passed. We were poised to award the foundation works for M+ Stage 1, and in fact there should have been a choice where the contractor of M+ could also be asked to build the basement. So time is pressing. in fact, we should complete the basement next August. Well, in fact, we should tell people whether they should include the foundation works for the basement before it is completed. And also in the supplementary paper to LegCo, we mentioned that if there will be 1 month delay for M+, there will be another expenditure of $20 million because inflation and construction costs are going up by 6%, and 1 month delay will cost another $20 million. So it's not just the basement, but even the superstructure will become more expensive. What about the $300 million? Do you have freedom to divert it from somewhere else? I talked about an option that we should ask the M+ foundation contractor to also do this, but by the latest, it should be January that we have to make a decision, or else we could not add it in, and then there will be a lot of financial implications because of the delay. Now, whether we can also pay the $300 million, we have to look again, and also whether we can recover it after we have spent it, or else there will be some implications. Mr. Lynch, can you now answer the question on free admission for Free Space Fest?
For coming. I'm sorry it was a difficult experience for you. I guess the issue is, just to clarify a couple of points, we have never charged for free space. We were proposing this year to charge a $50 entrance fee because there'd been some discussion at our board level and in the broader situation that people should make some contribution. I think we were when we planned free space, and that theory didn't really stand up. It was clearly a time of difficult time in Hong Kong. We decided that it would be best to make it free, in line with the first 2 festivals. We haven't. Which we didn't charge anything for. I think that decision was right, but we clearly were always a little bit unsure as to what the audience expectation would be when it was free. We had 20,000 people there for the first free space, 30,000 for the second free space, and then 43,000 yesterday. And so I think that led us to, I think it was the right decision to open it up as much as we could to Hong Kong. But the space we had in the previous 2 was much larger than the space we had yesterday because of the building projects. So we learned something on that, and clearly we'll be able to look at that in terms of any of the other projects.
Okay, time. 跟住副主席。
Deputy Chairman, Mr. Alan Leong. Thank you, Chairman. In Hong Kong, people in the cultural and arts field, especially Mr. Michael Lynch and your team, you will certainly be aware of the innovation and creativity shown in Umbrella Square. I'm sure you are proud of that. Of course, this is not the forum to discuss the political aspirations of the participants and students in Umbrella Square. But what I would like to say here is, if you can see such eye-opening creativity in cultural and arts dimensions in Umbrella Square, I'd like to ask the WKCD team, did it cause you to think of something? For me, I have reflected on this, and I realized that actually culture and arts need no design. You just give them the space, and Hong Kong people will show themselves to be extremely creative in both culture and arts. This is what we have seen in Umbrella Square. This is clear. And my question is, how can Hong Kong people's local taste and their interest in innovation and creativity and their aspirations, their dreams, and this is what we have seen in Hong Kong now. How can that be instructive for the WKCD? as a development direction? Now, maybe it's a very difficult question to ask, but let me focus on 2 points. Maybe you know that there is a group of people who are very committed, and starting from 3 weeks ago, they took the initiative to systematically document the arts items and also collect them from Umbrella Square. Now, no matter where you stand politically, now of course Mr. Leung Chun-ying is different from people in Umbrella Square, but this is a historic moment for Hong Kong, and I'm sure that this will be written into the history of China and the Hong Kong SAR. It is such an important moment. I'd like to ask WKCD whether you have any intention to preserve such arts and cultural innovations so that you also help to preserve history. Number 2, since now we see a lot of practical experience, in other words, you do not need to design it, you just give them a fertile soil and you give them the space, and Hong Kong people can actually be very creative. Well, the Free Space Fest will be organized only once a year, so have you thought of something else? Have you thought about how we can give further play to such innovation by Hong Kong people? Mr. Lynch.
Thanks, Mr. Deputy Chairman. We haven't been approached as yet in any formal sense, but we're clearly aware, and it's you cannot not be aware of the range of activities that have been taking place around this building and the other parts of town. I guess our view is it's a little bit early to be looking at the formal role that we might play. We will have further discussions in terms of going forward, but we would also look at it in the same way that we look at the King of Kowloon's work or any of the other work that comes out of the Hong Kong community. Consider who owns it, whether people are trying to donate it. Look quite rigorously as whether it sits within the acquisition policies. I think on the issue of documentation, there's no question. As an event, this is a highly documented event, and everyone is aware of it. And clearly, that would be something that into the future that that would in some way be reflected in either the moving images or the film or the television collections. But at this point, I think it's still too early to start looking at that. I think the one point I would make, which I've made repeatedly over the last 3.5 years, which I think is relevant to those critics who said Hong Kong is a cultural desert. No, I think clearly it's not. There are huge involvement from the arts community in all sorts of activities. Some of it will eventually find its way into our museum, and some of it may well find its way onto the art market. Because
because of time constraint, please keep your answers and questions both precise and concise. Ms. Sitho. Thank you, Chairman. In the last 2 months, you can see that as long as there is space, creativity will take place. Maybe the WKCD collection policy, and it may not be looking at community works. I would still like the WKCD-A to be aware that as long as you have the space for them, people will be very creative and it will flourish. Harcourt Road has given us this enlightenment. In other words, it is an exhibition without an application policy, and as long as you have the venue, really talented people are exhibiting their works there. And I'd like to ask about this paper. And I'd like to talk about IT and multimedia. I think the paper is quite silent on that. Under capacity building and other activities, you have done a lot of seminars and symposiums. You have also staged performances and organized activities. I have just visited your website, and I can see that under multimedia, as compared to the activities you have organized, I think it is quite inadequate. Like some symposiums mentioned in 13B M Plus Matters series. You are already having a 7th episode, but you should make use of the arts works for reference. Maybe you can just videotape such symposiums and upload them on your website, so more people will benefit. Now, first of all, they might not have been invited because they do not belong to the field. However, these people may still be interested in learning about such policies. So since you have spent so much manpower resources into organizing a physical symposium, why don't you walk an extra step and videotape it and upload it on your website? Maybe it is not on your own website, but put it on YouTube. And it's quite easy. You don't need to use a lot of RAM. So you can upload it to this public mass information platform, and unless you have a problem with copyright. And also, I can see press releases on groundbreaking ceremonies, etc. Well, you have a bunch of the rich and famous and renowned people, but it doesn't help with art and culture. So do you have resources and manpower to develop multimedia records so you can promote the use of multimedia for arts and culture? How much manpower and other resources do you have for this regard? And also, where do you subsume it under? Who will take the question?
Take exception to your judgment. I think our website is probably now one of the best arts websites in the world, including the documentation of many of the events. And if you compare our website this year from our website last year, we have made extraordinary progress in being able to document the events in a number of ways, with things like the neon sign exhibition, the seminars, that all of that material is available to be used, and we'll clearly see the dissemination of Digital M Plus will be a really big project that we're engaged with at the moment. The Decade project on the music and the film front, and we will be using the website as a major part of the public communication of West Kowloon. So we take on board some of your suggestions, but I think you're being a little harsh to us in terms of the progress that we have already made in terms of the use of the multimedia and the use of the digital space as part of the way of propagating it.
Thank you very much.
Maybe you can leave your question to the second round. Miss Emily Lau. Why did you stop me? Miss Emily Lau. Chairman, for West Kowloon, I don't think we can see anything in the next 10 or even 20 years, and this is regretful. We have a lot of problems. I think the administration and the authorities have to work harder to garner public support to make the issues less controversial, or else it's very hard to gain the support of the legislators. Right now, we are running into a big trouble with XRL, and the government is saying that the XRL delay won't affect the first and second stages of WKCD. And the second question is, why are things so expensive? If the funding application is not passed, if the construction work cannot go ahead, why are we creating so much troubles? Mr. Lynch, can you respond, please? Ms. Lau, you asked about the impacts of the XRL projects. As you can see, this is the West Kowloon terminus, and the construction work of XRL will take place here. So right now, this is still a construction site for the West Line. And here we have concrete construction sites, and the offices are here. So at this stage, it's affected by the West Line construction works. And for the C2 Center, right now, the construction works won't be affected by the XRL projects. But when we reach, by the time of 2016, 2017, the construction work at this area will take place. So by then, we will be in close touch with with them. And for M+, it's not currently affected. It's not currently affected by the XRL construction. And for the park, in principle, it's completely unaffected by XRL. And for the Lyric Theatre in the southern side, they still need certain space for marine transportation. And they can release this area by around 2016. For this area here, we are still discussing with the authorities, and according to the existing timetable, from 2017 they will release this area by parts. But then it all hinges on the progress of the development of XRL. We will keep in touch with the authorities. What about the basement? In day one, we didn't know that we had to pay so much money. According to the design by Foster, most of the transportation facilities are located in the basement. That's why we need a big basement as the connecting hub. But right now, our funding application is not just for the basement. Part of the funds is to provide for the infrastructure of WKCD, and part of the infrastructure is owned by the government. And as such, we have to come to the LegCo for funding. Chairman, I think they have to elaborate and explain to the legislators how the money would be used in order to gain our support. It's been 20 years already. It's possible that we have to wait another 20 years and nothing will happen. Thank you very much. We are 15 minutes behind schedule. Does anyone wish to answer to ask questions in the second round? Let's draw a line. 2 minutes each, please. My question was very clear in the previous round. The government hasn't answered the question. Right now, the money can be used for the second stage. We are talking about the basement. Right now, the situation is very difficult. How do you tackle the problem? I think political issues should be resolved by political means. You have to think about redeployment. The director have to head the development of WKCD and take a leadership role. Mr. Lynch and Mr. Chan have come here a lot of times. And right now the situation seems rosy. The facilities will be in place by 2020 or 2022, but the reality is that it won't happen. And the previous term administration didn't monitor the WKCD project, and now I have high expectations for Mrs. Lee. I think I do have expectation for this, for the current term administration. For manpower deployment, how would you tackle the problem? The government is spending our money every month. How do you cover your losses? I think the government has to be flexible. you cannot just listen to what Mr. Lynch says. Right now, Mr. Ray Chan asked a question about the ferry pier. Ms. Emily Lau said maybe nothing will happen in 20 years. I think this is entirely possible. You should have a plan B. You should have contingency measures. You cannot just remain passive all the time. Thank you very much for your comments. Any other questions? I think he cannot answer this question. If he cannot answer this question, I will come back again in the next round. I'm not talking about the transportation. I'm talking about the role of the government. How do you tackle the uncooperative actions from the Legislative Council? Mrs. Lee. We understand the problems, and we are also very concerned with the issue. We are working with the WKCDA, and we will raise these questions to the board of the authority next time. So we cannot report on anything today, but we will come back later. We will consider all the possibilities and plans in terms of the long-term financing of the basement. We will try to minimize construction costs. And if we have to redeploy financial resources of WKCD, it would have its consequences because it means that WKCDA will have less money on other projects. Ms. Sidho, I don't mind members going over the 3-minute mark, but you have to be consistent. Well, I have a question for Mr. Lynch. For the multimedia developments, how much manpower and how much money have you invested, and what kind of projects have you invested in? Mr. Lynch said I was very harsh, but compared with other government departments, well, sure, you have done more on multimedia. But as a department in charge of promoting cultural development, I think we should have more video recordings. You said, for example, the Sichu seminar, we should have video recordings. I think it's a pity because video recordings would enhance the overall value of the program. Mr. Lynch, please.
I thought your comments were harsh in regard to your assessment of our website. I think I've looked at many thousands of websites, particularly in Hong Kong and in other places, and the work we've put into our website and a substantial investment of funds is clearly, and the fact that it is now in, it's one of the best bilingual or trilingual websites in regard to an arts organisation that you can find anywhere. Clearly we have resources working to expand both the education, the learning side of what we're doing.
Maybe let us focus on the video recording on the event that took place instead of the entire website in general.
Well, no, we've got, we will be able to provide, all of the things that we actually undertake, we'll be able to upload them to the websites. And clearly that's the intention, that events that we do, clearly the issue of performance is still, until we start producing performances ourselves and the copyright issues are grappled with, we're not able to put Cantonese operas up there that don't belong to us. But we are looking at using our website to facilitate audience development. The whole idea of the Rising Stars project is very much to be able to disseminate the work that comes out of that project. All of our projects, whether they've free space, we've taken substantial video footage which will be uploaded to the website of the performances, and we'll continue to do that because we think it's the best way of building the support from the local community and the broader community in terms of what we're doing.
But you owe me an answer on how much the resources and how many persons.
Well, I can't give you the specific. I've got 10 people working on the digital side of our organisation. Clearly, I'm very happy at some further point to brief you on our plans in terms of communications, marketing, and the development of things like Digital M+, a number of other specific initiatives, which I think will be very much answers to some of your comments.
我諗你會後提供多啲資料俾何議員啦，好嗎？
So you can provide more information to Ms. Sit-Ho after the meeting. We have covered different aspects so far, but then we're still not, some members are still not satisfied in some aspects in terms of multimedia, film, etc. We can continue our discussions at a later time. So on to the next item on the agenda. Item agenda 3, proposed extension of a supernumerary principal government engineer post and a supernumerary administrative officer staff grade C related to WKCD, and the paper number CB bracket 2 306 stroke 14-15 brackets 05 04 and 05. Perhaps I will go through the papers briefly. And we propose extending a new supernumerary principal government engineer post and a supernumerary administrative office grade officer staff grade C post, and the time period is 4 years, and the post started in July 2010, and it will end in March 2015. And with work with the WKCD well underway from 2015 to 2019, we will see new facilities opening in West Kowloon. And as such, we have to maintain close communication with various government departments in terms of infrastructure, approval for planning, etc.
So we'd like to extend the post by 4 years until the 31st of March 2019. Mrs. Lee is now the project manager, and the post is to monitor the progress and also coordinate with government departments. One of the important duties is to promote the integrated basement and also to support the development of common facilities between WKCD and the government, and also to request funding from LegCo. As for the PAS, the post is to monitor the work of the WKCDA to make sure that it acts according to the law, and also to make sure that public resources are used properly, and also that the WKCDA has accountability and transparency. The PAS will also have to ensure that the authority and other organizations and stakeholders have sufficient communication among them in terms of art positioning and also management mode, etc., that the authority would have to consider the views of other stakeholders and also to achieve a synergy with other arts groups. With the support of the subcommittee, we will apply to the ESC and consult their views, and also to apply for approval from FC. The details are in the paper. Thank you. Questions? Do you support the extension of these two posts? I have Ms. Chen Yun Han, Ms. Emily Lau. Ms. Chen Yun Han first. Yes, Chairman. 4 minutes. As I said, I support the paper because when we discussed WKCD, very often the official representing HAB would act like a big supporting role. I don't know whether he or she has a strong enough duty list, but I can see that it's very strong. I believe WKCD is facing a difficult situation because of what is happening in society and LegCo, and I believe the administration should come up with solutions. I have a good impression of these two officials, and I support the extension of their posts. But then, in the end, it boils down to a solution for the present gridlock. I don't know whether this will eventually be supported by ESC. Okay, even if you get the endorsement of ESC, how can the HAB really play its role vis-a-vis WKCD? I have been asking many people, and how can you really play your role as the HAB? You talk about capacity building. What are you doing? And also later on, you will need to have massive management work. You will be adding venues 3 by 3 by 3. Many young people now have very innovative thinking. Will you be able to supply the officials who can work with them? And at WKCD, can you allow more participation by young people? And it is not just up to the WKCD. The administration will have to react to this new scene in Hong Kong. Okay, so I support the extension of the post, but given present government policies, if you will just sit there and wait for LegCo's support, you will not achieve a lot. You will have to reorganize the duties among the officials. You understand the WKCD team will act on its own. It might not want to listen to you, especially Dr. Chan, the executive director. He has been here all the time, but it seems the team is not exactly listening to us or the administration. So I have been asking these questions. Do you have the resolve to tackle these problems? And also, if we give you the post, will you do a good monitoring job? Mrs. Fong. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Chan. I understand she shows a lot of care and concern towards WKCD, and she has been giving us a lot of views. The authority is an independent body corporate, but you must understand and not forget that the chairman is the CS4A. The HAB has a very strong monitoring role, and we are steering the policies. The authority must align with the cultural policy of the administration, but the WKC also has a very strong professional team which can give advice on our cultural policy to see whether we should steer it in a certain direction. So the HAB and the authority have a very interactive role. Well, I don't want to be in your way, but you must understand me. What you are saying is meaningless. What I mean is, how can you allow the new batch of officials, maybe they're in their posts already, but that they can really expound what they need to do? You have a duty list here, job description. I can give you an example. What about the car park and the ferry pier? We have been talking to them, but nothing has come out of those discussions. So when you monitor progress, this is your role. You have to tackle these problems. I can give a brief reply. We have a monitoring role as the government. Mrs. Lee is a very hard-working official. She is having meetings with departments and also the WKCD. But the WKCD has also engaged an operations director. But we have monthly meetings, so we have good coordination and we are chasing them up on progress. Ms. Chan, within the next half year, I hope you will see faster responses and more meaningful responses from the WKCD. But that operations director will have to catch up on progress where there is delay, and we will ask them to deliver whatever has been promised. Next, Ms. Emily Lau. Chairman, I think Ms. Chan has put her finger on really very solemn issues. You have been asking money to extend posts or create posts, but you have a consultation panel. And are you talking about disbanding the consultation panel? Many of them are stakeholders. They are from the sector and they are very unhappy. As I said, we haven't seen anything for a period of 10 to 20 years, and now you ask us to extend posts, to spend more money. You really have to convince LegCo that you can do something, and you have to communicate with members. You need to explain things to us, and you need to garner our support, but you're not doing enough. And the consultation panel, many of the panel members are unhappy. So do you understand the situation? Some people say the authority is working on its own and is unwilling to cooperate with the government, and the XRL is not exactly listening to you. And yet you're coming here for money. How can we support you? In fact, we have supported the project for many years. And even now, we are just marking time. The CS4A, she's just too busy. She actually said she wouldn't like to be the chairman of the authority. Is that going to end up in a mess? P.S. Thank you for the question, Ms. Lau. In October, we have formed a new term of the authority, and we are going to have the first meeting in December. The new board of the authority may have new ideas about WKCD development. Last time, after the meeting of this subcommittee, the consultation panel again had a meeting, and the authority chairman, the CS4A, attended that consultation panel meeting, hoping that the panel could do more vis-a-vis the relationship between WKCD and young people and other stakeholders, that we should be able to take on board more of those views. And in the days to come, the consultation panel will be more proactive in advising WKCD. Ms. Lau also asked that HAB and the WKCDA should explain more our work to members. I absolutely agree. At the meeting or outside meetings, we should explain the progress of the works to members and our difficulties more. The HAB team, together with the WKCD, will do more in this regard. The authority board has just been appointed. We didn't get the information, right? Well, you should give that information to us today at the meeting. Why haven't you got the information with us? Well, we can supply it to you after the meeting. We have already issued a press release. Well, you should copy that press release to our clerk. Are you aware that we exist? I think this is outrageous. I can't see the press release here. I didn't know that it was newly appointed. Is this your way of work? That authority is important. It oversees the works for us, but you don't even need to tell us at the subcommittee who are the members. P.S. Is that your way of working with us? How many old people, how many new people have been appointed to the authority? We can give you the list of new members to you after the meeting. Chairman, do you know? Do you know the membership? You are the chairman. Not even you know. The administration, how can you treat the subcommittee like this? Well, if the authority is going to hold meeting once or twice a year, let them just have tea gatherings. Next member, deputy chairman. Well, what is the membership change like at the authority board? You don't need to mention names. Maybe it's our fault. We did not read your press releases. Mrs. Fong, I hope you will not be too harsh with us because we have stacks and stacks of papers to read. But please just let us know the membership change. I just know that Mr. Ma Fong Kwok, he himself said that he was reappointed. Referring to the paper you submitted when the two posts were created, these people, project manager, we asked whether it had to be an engineer or whether it had to be a works person. Mrs. Lee, maybe you can speak up. You have been holding the post. Let us know more, please. As for the PAS, maybe Miss Chong, Miss Sabrina Chong can tell us your experience. Miss Chen Yun Han has actually stated our long-time concerns. The AOS Grade C should be the bridge between the government and the WKCD, right? But what is this bridge doing? What are you transferring on this bridge that is between the government and the authority? What actually goes through you, Miss Law? How do you expound your role as the bridge? Chairman, let me take the first question. In the new board, it started on the 23rd of October. the government reappointed 8 members to the board, and 6 new members were appointed. I will supply the name list to the subcommittee later. The other 2 members of the team, you asked whether it must be an engineer or can we have an architect. Well, yes. What is important is whoever it is, the person should have handled relatively massive project works. At the WKCD, there are buildings, and also there is a close relationship with other projects in the vicinity. As long as that person has this kind of experience, that person can take up the post. But in the days past, you didn't feel that there was anything that was lacking as an engineer. I'm just going back on the historical papers. I'm not questioning your work's performance. We were asking the question whether it would be better if it were an architect, and I'd like to hear from the horse's mouth. I have worked on the Kai-Tak site for a period of time, and the situation is similar. And under me, I'm supported by architects. I can't see any difficulty as of now. Ms. Sabrina Law. Thank you, Chairman. The authority has a professional team with huge arts and culture experience. At the HAB, we need somebody with sufficient public administration experience to act as the bridge. I'm on the Executive Committee, Museum Committee, and also Performing Arts Committee, and also Remuneration Committee of the authority. Our role is to monitor the use of public funds and its corporate governance, as well as other aspects of operation, that it should comply with the WKCDA ordinance. We, therefore, don't need somebody from the arts and culture field to take up the post.
In the past, our colleagues have a lot of experience in public administration, and we can effectively help the government monitor the progress of WKCD. I'm not sure if I have to wait for the second round. We don't have a second round, so please continue. And in terms of the role of a bridge, can you give specific examples on what kind of exchanges are there between WKCD and the government? It's very hard to quantify. I just want to know the nature of such exchanges or liaison. Ms. Law said she is a member in 4 separate panels in WKCD to make sure that WKCD is complying with all the rules and its role. So if we have this bridge, so to speak, it goes both ways. So what would WKCD bring to the government? Let me cite an example. For performing arts, when WKCD plans the roles and positioning of its performing arts venues, our role at the Home Affairs Bureau is to convey experience of the LCSD to WKCD. Of course, I'm not saying that West Kowloon has to follow the government's model, but hopefully our experience in the past can help. For Mr. Michael Lynch, if he wants to convey his view to the chairman or Ms. Carrie Lam, does he have to go through yourself, or can he reach Ms. Lam directly? In the past, they have WKC has direct communication channels with the government, but they have so many things to do. But if sometimes the WKCD might need our help in conveying their comments to the government, and that's our job. I think you should enhance communications with us. We only know about a lot of information just before this meeting. Having heard everyone's views, I guess you would not oppose the filing of this application of this supernumerary post. Any other business? As in the past, myself and the Vice Chairman will meet the Home Affairs Bureau and WKCD to further discuss matters. If you wish to discuss any other items, please let the Secretariat know. And for issues of great concern, we will discuss these items with the HAB and WKCD. Later, the Secretariat will follow up on arrangements for the next meeting. We will update you further in due course. Any other business? If not, thank you very much for attending the meeting today.